He was once one of the richest men on earth, a man so powerful that he offered to pay off his country's entire debt. To some, he was a hero. To others, he was the most dangerous criminal of the 20th century. His empire generated millions of dollars every single day, and his name struck fear across continents. But how did a poor boy from Medellín become the world's most notorious drug lord? And how did it all come crashing down? This is the story of Pablo Escobar from beginning to end. Part 1. The assassination of presidential candidate Jorge Eliezer Gaitan. On April 9, 1948, Colombia witnessed one of the most influential moments in its modern history. Jorge Eliezer Gaitan was a beloved politician and a charismatic populist leader, and many saw him as the future president of Colombia. He was known for defending the poor and criticizing corruption, which earned him massive popularity among citizens. That afternoon, Gaitan left his office in the capital, Bogotá, as he usually did. While walking down the street, a man named Juan Roa Sierra approached him and fired several shots at close range. Gaitan collapsed on the ground amid shock and panic. He was quickly taken to the hospital, but doctors were unable to save him, and he was declared dead shortly afterward. The news spread across the country like wildfire, and shock turned into massive anger. Thousands of citizens poured into the streets, and unprecedented riots and violence erupted, known as the Bogotazo. Buildings and shops were set on fire, and chaos engulfed the capital. Gaitan's assassination marked the beginning of many years of political conflict and violence in Colombia. Even decades later, questions and theories still remain about whether the assassin acted alone or if other forces were behind the assassination. What is certain, however, is that Gaitan's death changed Colombia's history forever. Part 2. The birth and early life of Pablo Escobar. On December 1, 1949, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born in the city of Rio Negro in the Antioquia region of Colombia, just 1 year after the assassination of Jorge Eliezer Gaitan, and during a period when Colombia was still engulfed in political violence and unrest. A child was born who would later become one of the most infamous and dangerous criminals in history. Shortly after his birth, his family moved to Medellín, the city that would later witness his rise and transformation into a legend of organized crime. He came from a family of 9 members. His father, Abel de Jesus Escobar, was a simple farmer who worked long hours to provide for the family. His mother, Hermilda Gaviria, was a schoolteacher who believed deeply in education and honest work. The family included 7 children: Roberto Escobar, Pablo Escobar, Ramiro Escobar, Luis Fernando Escobar, Gloria Inés Escobar, Alba Marina Escobar, and Luz Maria Escobar. Pablo grew up in a modest environment, witnessing from an early age the huge gap between the rich and the poor. He saw people who had everything, while his own family struggled to maintain a stable life. As the years passed, he began to feel deprived, and a strong desire for money and power started to grow inside him. What set him apart, however, was his intelligence and his strong ability to persuade and plan. He would often tell those around him that he would become rich, no matter the cost. Around the age of 13, he took his first steps into the world of crime. At first, he sold smuggled cigarettes in local neighborhoods and markets. He then moved on to selling fake lottery tickets to make quick profits. Many accounts also suggest that he was involved in stealing and reselling old gravestones, which were modified and sold for money. Over time, his activities expanded to car theft and working with small black market groups. Even at school, he tried to make money in any way possible. He would lend small amounts of money to classmates and take them back with extra interest, in a practice similar to informal lending with profit. Although these activities seemed minor, they revealed an important aspect of his character. He was constantly thinking about how to make money and believed that wealth was the only path to power and respect. Poverty alone was not the only reason that pushed him toward crime. Rather, his sense of deprivation and strong desire to become rich led him to seek shortcuts to achieve what he wanted. As he entered adolescence, his circle expanded into smuggling networks and organized crime groups. His cousin, Gustavo Gaviria, became one of his closest companions. This man would later play a crucial role in building one of the most dangerous criminal empires in history. At that time, no one could have predicted that the boy who started by selling smuggled cigarettes, forging lottery tickets, and stealing cars would one day become a man hunted by governments around the world. But for Pablo, this was only the beginning. Elsewhere in the world, the United States was preparing to declare a new war. A war that would change the course of his life forever, to be continued. Part 3. Richard Nixon and the Declaration of the War on Drugs, merged version plus link to Pablo Escobar. While drug trafficking was expanding across the United States and beyond, an American president saw that the country was facing a growing threat that endangered public health and national security. On June 17, 1971, U.S. President Richard Nixon delivered a historic speech declaring that drug abuse and addiction had become one of the most serious challenges facing the United States. During that speech, Nixon referred to drugs as public enemy number one, emphasizing that the government would launch a massive campaign to combat their spread. He believed that the problem was not limited to users alone, but also included the rapidly growing smuggling and distribution networks inside and outside the United States. Beyond rhetoric, Nixon announced a series of programs and measures to confront the crisis. Among the most important steps were increased funding for addiction treatment and the creation of rehabilitation programs to help addicts return to normal life. He also supported the expansion of treatment centers and medical research on addiction, aiming to better understand the problem and develop effective solutions. At the same time, his administration strengthened law enforcement efforts to pursue drug traffickers and dismantle criminal organizations benefiting from the drug trade. In the following years, these policies evolved into what later became known as the War on Drugs, a long-term campaign involving security, legal, and health measures within the United States and abroad. In 1973, the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, was established, a federal agency dedicated to combating drug trafficking at both domestic and international levels. Through this agency, the United States began intensifying its efforts to track and dismantle trafficking networks that were bringing cocaine into the country. But elsewhere in the world, specifically on the streets of Medellín, Colombia, a young and ambitious man named Pablo Escobar was watching this global shift in a very different way. While governments saw drugs as a dangerous threat that needed to be eliminated, Pablo saw them as a massive opportunity for wealth and power. A dangerous idea slowly began forming in his mind, the idea of building a trafficking network capable of transporting cocaine from Colombia to the United States, taking advantage of the growing demand in the black market. He understood that this field was extremely dangerous, but at the same time, he believed it was the fastest path to achieving the wealth he had dreamed of since childhood. And from that moment, the foundations of his grand plan began to take shape, a plan that would eventually turn him into one of the richest and most dangerous men in the world. But how did he begin executing this idea? And how did he build his empire step by step? That is what we will discover in the next part. Part 4. The Rise of Pablo Escobar and the Establishment of the Cocaine Empire. In his early 20s, at the age of 22, Pablo Escobar entered a completely new phase of his life. a transition from small street crimes to the world of international drug trafficking. In the early 1970s, Escobar began building a network of contacts with smugglers and criminals in the black market, drawing on his previous experience in smuggling within Colombia. At first, he focused on trafficking marijuana from Colombia to the United States via Panama, a trade that moved quickly and generated massive profits. But despite his rapid success, Escobar was thinking on a much larger scale. He did not want to remain a small-time trafficker. His goal was to control the entire market. Over time, he decided to move into a higher and more dangerous level: cocaine trafficking. This is where the idea of creating a massive criminal organization began to take shape. Not just a smuggling network, but something resembling a corporate structure. He founded what later became known as the Medellín Cartel, an organization aimed at controlling the production and distribution of cocaine to maximize profits. By 1976, the cartel had been fully established, and Escobar began surrounding himself with key associates, including Carlos Leder, Fabio Ochoa, José Gonzalo Rodríguez Gacha. The plan was based on importing coca paste from countries such as Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador, then transporting it to Colombia, where it would be processed into cocaine ready for distribution. Secret laboratories were built deep within Colombia's dense jungles, especially near the Yari River, far from the reach of authorities. But it did not stop there. Trafficking operations expanded into multiple complex routes, by air, sea, and land, and even through hidden networks reaching the United States and Mexico. However, on May 19, 1976, Escobar's network faced its first serious test when he and members of his group were arrested while returning from a trip to Ecuador, carrying around 18 kilograms of cocaine. At first, Escobar relied on bribery as he had done before, but this time he was surprised to find that some officers refused to take the money. He was briefly detained but later released through intervention and corruption within the Colombian judicial system. At a time when corruption was still widespread, this experience, however, changed something important in his mindset. After his release, it is reported that he ordered retaliation against some of the officers who refused the bribes, sending a clear message that challenging his network came at a deadly cost. According to his brother Roberto Escobar, this period established a famous principle within his criminal world: plata o plomo, meaning silver or lead, money or death. By the end of the 1970s, the United States began noticing massive flows of cocaine coming from Colombia, which led it to view these networks as a direct threat. In 1978, working with his partner Carlos Leder, Escobar established a new shipping point on an island known as Norman's Cay, about 350 kilometers off the coast of Florida, which was used as a storage and transit hub for cocaine entering the United States. As American pressure increased, Washington began taking stronger action, especially after realizing that traffickers were often released easily after arrest. In 1979, U.S. President Jimmy Carter signed an agreement with the Colombian government allowing drug traffickers to be extradited to the United States for trial. This development marked a major turning point in Escobar's life. For the first time, the threat was no longer just local police, but the most powerful country in the world. From this moment, a new and far more dangerous chapter began in the rise of Pablo Escobar's empire, a chapter of confrontation with the United States. Part 5. Pablo Escobar enters politics. By the early 1980s, Pablo Escobar was no longer just a drug trafficker with wealth and influence. He had set his sights on a far more ambitious goal: entering politics. Escobar understood that reaching Congress required more than money. He needed the public to see him as a hero, not a criminal. But how could Colombia's most notorious criminal become a hero in the eyes of the people? For him, the answer was simple. He needed an enemy the public hated more than him. In 1981, the perfect opportunity arose when a group known as M19 kidnapped a woman named Martha Ochoa, the sister of the Ochoa brothers, who were key partners in the founding of the Medellín Cartel. The kidnappers demanded an enormous ransom of around $25 million. Although Escobar was earning massive profits, at times nearly $1 million a day, he refused to pay. He believed that giving in to extortion would weaken his authority and make him appear vulnerable to his rivals. Instead, he created a new organization called Muerte y Secuestradores, or MIAs, meaning death to kidnappers. The stated purpose of this group was to hunt down and eliminate kidnappers. After a series of operations targeting those suspected of involvement in the kidnapping, in which more than 100 people were killed, the M19 movement was forced to release Martha Ochoa. From that moment, Escobar began to gain a different image in the eyes of many Colombians. To his supporters, he was no longer just a drug trafficker, but a man capable of delivering justice when the state failed. He used this growing popularity to launch social and charitable initiatives, including a movement known as Civismo en Marcha. This movement supported various social and environmental projects, including tree planting, improving poor neighborhoods, and contributing to the protection of endangered species. Through these activities, Escobar managed to enter the political arena. In 1982, he became a substitute member of the Colombian Congress, moving closer to his dream of reaching the highest levels of power. However, his political career did not last long. In 1983, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla was appointed Minister of Justice and launched a major campaign to expose Pablo Escobar's true identity. Lara Bonilla was convinced that Escobar was not a businessman or politician, but one of the most dangerous drug traffickers in the country. As political and media pressure increased, the carefully built image of Escobar began to collapse. But Escobar was not the type of man who accepted defeat. In 1984, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla was assassinated in an event that shocked all of Colombia. After this crime, the Colombian government took a much tougher stance than ever before. Extradition agreements with the United States were reinstated, and security cooperation between Colombia and Washington was strengthened to pursue drug traffickers. At that moment, Escobar felt something he had never felt before. He felt betrayed. For him, Colombia was the country where he was born and where he had built his fortune. But now his own government was working with the United States to hunt him down. From that moment on, the conflict between Escobar and the authorities was no longer just a pursuit of a criminal. It became an open war that would change Colombia's history forever. Part 6. The Fall of the Empire. After Pablo Escobar failed to stop the Colombian government from pursuing him, he returned to his most infamous slogan, Plata o plomo, silver or lead, accept the bribe or face death. During the 1980s, Escobar reached the peak of his power. Forbes ranked him among the richest men in the world for 7 consecutive years, estimating his fortune at around $30 billion. His influence became so immense that he even offered to pay off Colombia's entire foreign debt, which was approximately $10 billion, in exchange for one condition: the cancellation of the extradition treaty with the United States. But the government rejected the offer. For Escobar, this refusal was a declaration of war. On November 6, 1985, the M19 movement stormed the Palace of Justice in Bogotá in protest against government policies. During the assault, several judges and Supreme Court members were killed, while others were taken hostage. The government attempted to negotiate with the armed group, but the talks failed. The Colombian military then stormed the building to retake it by force. The operation ended with more than 100 deaths, large parts of the Palace of Justice burned, and the loss of critical judicial files, including investigations linked to Pablo Escobar. By the end of 1985, the cocaine empire had reached its peak. The Medellín cartel controlled nearly 80% of the global cocaine trade. Its daily revenue was estimated at around $70 million per day. In today's value, that would amount to hundreds of millions of dollars daily. The scale of wealth was so extreme that Escobar's men reportedly spent thousands of dollars every month just on rubber bands used to bundle cash. Losses from damaged money or rats eating stored cash were estimated in the millions annually. But despite this immense power and wealth, cracks in the empire had already begun to appear. In 1987, his close partner Carlos Later was captured after a massive manhunt supported by the United States. For the first time, Escobar's worst fear became reality. Later was extradited to the United States under the new agreement. He was sentenced to a long prison term, and over time began cooperating with American authorities in exchange for reduced punishment. Escobar realized that danger was closing in faster than ever before. On August 18, 1989, Colombian presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán was assassinated. Galán was one of the strongest supporters of extradition and one of the fiercest opponents of drug cartels. After his death, a new presidential candidate emerged, Cesar Gaviria. But Escobar was not willing to allow anyone who supported extradition to rise to power. On November 27, 1989, a passenger plane flying from Bogotá to Cali was bombed shortly after takeoff. All 107 people on board were killed. The target of the attack had been Cesar Gaviria, but he was not on the plane. This marked a turning point in how Colombians viewed Escobar. Once seen by some as a Robin Hood figure, he was now widely regarded as a terrorist willing to kill civilians to protect his empire. Colombia entered an unprecedented wave of violence. Later in 1989, the Administrative Security Department building in Bogotá was bombed, turning the country into an open battlefield between the state and the Medellín cartel. When Cesar Gaviria became president, Escobar attempted to pressure the government through kidnappings and violence to end extradition policies. But the war was draining everyone. On July 4, 1991, a new Colombian constitution was adopted, including the prohibition of extraditing Colombian citizens to the United States. After long negotiations, Escobar agreed to surrender, but he demanded one unusual condition. He would build his own prison. And so, La Catedral was created. On the surface, it was a prison. But in reality, it was a luxury compound from which Escobar continued to run his criminal empire as if he had never been arrested. From inside, he still issued orders and controlled his organization. In 1992, he tortured and killed 2 of his men inside the prison after suspecting them of stealing money. When the government learned of this, it decided to transfer him to a standard prison facility. But Escobar was informed before the transfer took place. As Colombian forces prepared to move him, he had already made his decision. He was often heard saying, "Better a grave in Colombia than a cell in the United States." On July 22, 1992, government forces arrived at La Catedral, but they discovered something shocking. Escobar had escaped. Once again, the largest manhunt in Colombian history began. The government worked with the United States and formed a special unit known as the Search Bloc. At the same time, new enemies emerged, including paramilitary groups and victims seeking revenge for years.